Prime Minister, Honourable Minister of Housing, other Cabinet colleagues, Chairman of the National Housing Corporation, Acting Chief Geographer, other officials from the National Housing Corporation, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me join the words of welcome that were offered by Mr. Wiltshire, and certainly on behalf of everyone in this Brittons Hill community, and by extension St. Michael's South Central constituency, I want to welcome all of you here this afternoon to what is a very significant event for several reasons in my humble submission. For some time now, I certainly have held the view and have been expressing this view for as long as I've been a member of Parliament, that if we are to truly wrestle the housing crisis in Barbados into the ground, we have to start to look at going up. We have to urbanize. It is the only way that we're going to properly deal with the housing problem in Barbados, and more particularly, the problem in the urban corridor. I not only represent a constituency in urban Barbados, but I have basically lived my entire life and will probably die in an urban community. I have nothing against those who choose to journey far and away to enjoy the vistas and the climes of rural Barbados. But there are those of us who actually enjoy living in urban Barbados. And therefore, for this government to decide that we will put up quality urban housing that is affordable for income earners in the lower range is very progressive. It is something that I feel extremely strongly about. And I'm very happy that this constituency has been chosen for the first urban high-rise housing. I have only two regrets, basically. One, that it didn't happen sooner, and the second one, and I'm steering straight in the direction of the chief town planner, because he and I always have this discussion, is that whereas it's only 6 stories, I don't have a problem with it being 10 or 12 stories. That's my opinion. People are looking for places to live, and the future is urban high-rise buildings. The town planner gets a little nervous when buildings get too tall, I know. And I can appreciate that. He's concerned about the impact on the streetscape, but the despoiling the environment, and these wonderful terms that town planners like to use. But there's a certain imperative that we need to confront. And I think that this government is showing that it's bold in dealing with the housing crisis in Barbados in this manner. Now, some people can highlight, and will highlight in fact, the negative aspects to urban high-rise housing. But there are actually a number of positives also. First of all, it is improving the lot of your urban population, for too long often associated with living conditions that are not necessarily the best, crowded and cramped, compromising in amenities and the like. But in addition to that, you're also allowing your population to be close to where the majority of the business activity is taking place. So invariably there are savings as well from a point of view of being close to the centers of activity in your country. And not only because we know you can't only live by doing work, but you're also close to schools, places of worship, and areas and places to recreate yourself, restaurants, centers of entertainment, etc. So in essence, you have more people who are closer to all of the areas, and no doubt saving transportation costs and the like. So there's some definite benefits. And in the case of Barbados, as we heard earlier, being one of the most densely populated countries in the world, we have the added benefit of freeing up valuable land for other activities, because obviously the families per square foot in a complex like this will be much greater, therefore freeing up space for other activity, industrial, commercial, recreational, agricultural, and all the like. So there's some definite benefits in going in this direction. And I am very happy, and in fact quite proud to be associated with, and I'm going to say it, a Democratic Labour Party government that was bold to make this decision to go in this direction. You know, the idea of having, how should we put it, multi-family units is not new, but the decision to go up so far in the year is new. And I think it is important to recognize that this is an entire program that we're rolling out. Valery is a start, and in fact, we are going to be going on to the Grotto, Mason Hall Street, and Exting, I think it is, or Exmouth as well, where close to 400 housing solutions will be provided in this first phase, because the idea is that we're not going to stop here, you know, we can keep going. In fact, if I have my way, where we are sitting right now might be another urban high-rise housing building sometime soon, if we can get the bank's pasture to be freed up and build a mini stadium for the Brittons Hill community. But we've been working on that, and that's a work in progress. I have learned in this business you have to be very patient. During my first term, I well recall making a lot of noise to get things done as far as housing was concerned. And yes, we can get to that, don't worry. And being told then by some of the senior parliamentarians, in fact I remember, she's no longer a member of parliament, Dame Billy Miller, when the Cats Castle program with IDB was rolled out, she was able to tell me quietly that, you know, she had been lobbying for that since the 80s. It literally took 20 years for her to get something to happen in Cats Castle. And so sometimes as an MP, you have to be patient. And I want to, of course, single out my constituents for bearing with me, recognizing that the patience has paid off. In Tweedside Road, we have now 20 housing solutions, an area that had none up to 2008. And most of them are occupied up to last night I was visiting. There are issues, lighting, etc. We're going to get to that. But we have started to deal with the problem. And now Brittons Hill, not to be left out, will have not only the 72 full family units in the 2 high-rise towers, but we'll also have 8 bed-sitter studios adjacent to those 2 towers. So 80 families will see relief here in Brittons Hill as well. And I want to, of course, say to those of you, because, you know, that is 100 solutions. And believe it or not, that is the tip of the iceberg. But again, patience has brought us this far, and patience will take us even further. So there are more projects planned in the Carrington Village area as well. We are trying to identify the land now. And as I said, there are other things that we are looking to do as well in Brittons Hill, and potentially even what we are now calling the Valery Housing Project might be expanded, possibly. So this is where we are, basically. I know it's always dangerous to start thanking people because you may forget someone, but I really have to thank my friend, the Honorable Michael Lashley, the Minister of Housing. As I said, when we were in opposition, sitting next to each other, at the time, of course, he was a very aggressive shadow Minister of Housing. We discussed the possibilities then of what we could do for urban housing. And we did discuss the whole issue of urbanization and high-rise housing. And it is very worthwhile, in my view, to sit and watch a friend who has just taken the housing portfolio by storm and is not satisfied with all the kudos he's been getting for good work, but is now in fact taking government housing to a completely another level as well.
This program was conceptualized based on the evidence received of the challenges and needs of persons currently living in the urban corridor and those who wish to reside within the same corridor. This evidence revealed that there is limited land space in the urban corridor. Simply put, we do not have the existence of large tracts of land available for persons to rent or purchase. Evidence also revealed that there is some insecurity of tenure for a mass of households who rent lots in non-tenantry situations. Also, the numerous complaints of tenants of the conditions and quality of houses rented, and the fact that landlords are now into the new fad of renting rooms rather than houses. And also, we are also guided by the evidence that numerous applicants to the National Housing Corporation cannot purchase property or simply obtain a mortgage. And also the evidence that access to many urban tenantries is prohibited by unpaved roads and access is rendered impossible after heavy rainfall. Therefore, it is the responsibility of the state to find creative and new solutions to tackle these problems. When I mention insecurity of tenure, I am specifically referring to those single-lot tenants within the urban area. I must state to you that there are no legal provisions to protect them, and as a result, these householders are at the mercy of landlords. Also, any upgrading or improvement to their homes, or even constructing a permanent structure on the land, is at the whims and fancy of the landowner. I must also state the other person or special person of interest will be those tenants who occupy rented land and rented houses on the same land. The reason I mention this is because from a survey conducted of the sample population in the urban tenantry, it was revealed that more than 20% of those tenants interviewed fell into this category. The challenge here for this group is the ability to solve the associated problem of poor housing conditions and the fact that maintenance of the property rests with the property owner. The other challenge that we have will be those individuals who have lost the right to purchase and yet remain on the particular plot of land. Such householders are exposed to the cruel and constant threat of eviction and possible destruction and eventual loss of their dwelling units. A survey carried out by the Ministry of Housing and Lands revealed that there are 1,000 householders living in such situations. We must also be cognizant of the fact that we cannot prevent landowners from asserting their rights under the law, and there is no intention of this government of breaching that constitutional right. It is against this background that the government has taken the decision to construct high-rise units and other traditional units. This will add to the quality of life and improve the living standards in the urban area. To achieve this goal, we have identified vacant crown lands and also crown lands of abandoned properties in the urban corridor to create more housing solutions. Valery is being built on crown land, which was underutilized and abandoned for a number of years. This project consists of 72 two-bedroom units with modern facilities outfitted for the elderly and the physically challenged. We have decided as a government to include in this program units to accommodate the physically challenged and the elderly. I want to congratulate the developers for answering our call in making these units accessible to the physically challenged and to the elderly. Special thanks must also be given to the Chief Town Planner and his officials for their cooperation, acceptance, and guidance in relation to this project, and also further projects in the Urban High-Rise and Renewal Program. Cabinet also agreed that as part of this public-private sector partnership, that the developer will provide the financing up front, and also instructed that he employ small contractors in the construction of the high-rise units. I'm also instructed that this site now employs 150 persons. I must also state that this joint partnership program is indeed a necessity, particularly where government is confronted with the global economic recession and is limited and restricted in terms of its financial elbow room, and of course faced with a high demand for housing. Further, this is not simply, as said before by my good friend, the construction of a building on the site. It is about building a community, creating and giving opportunities for small businesses in the area, and the provision of employment opportunities. It must be acknowledged that governments over time has constructed various types of higher density housing solutions. This project of Valery is the first of higher level units to be constructed by government to expand its supply of housing solutions to a great number of Barbadians. Higher density housing solutions has been utilized across the world in both developed and developing countries as a viable solution, particularly in urban or city areas. The Urban High-Rise and Renewal Program will see the construction of some 400 rental units in the Greater Bridgetown area. To this end, we have acquired lands at Exmouth, Beacons for the construction of 112 units, subject to the town planning approval, and will hopefully comprise 2 7-story buildings on the site. 84 units will also be constructed at Grotto St. Michael. Additional units will be constructed at Pine Wildy, White Park Road, Deacons Farm, and Country Road in St. Michael. We have received town planning permission for the majority of sites, and is now in the hands of the Minister of Finance to facilitate the financing of these projects. We at the National Housing Corporation, and also myself as Minister, we are ready and ready to go. I certainly cannot leave this podium without giving an update on the housing program of my ministry. We have completed projects at Marchfield, Ward Hall, French Village, Fort Hill, and Greens. The units at Country Park Terrace and Sturt Lodge are occupied. Rental units which are currently being constructed at Fort Rose, Clapham, will be completed by January 2012 and will be ready for occupation, hopefully by February. Houses being constructed at River St. Philip will be occupied by December. Of course, I cannot leave River St. Philip North. Additional starter homes will be constructed at Woodburn, Parish Land, Riverview in St. Philip, Vauxhall in Christchurch, and Walkers in St. Andrew. I also want to congratulate the management of the National Housing Corporation and the 11 small contractors currently employed at Lancaster 1 and 2 in the construction of some 80 houses. These affordable houses will be ready for occupation in a matter of months. Ladies and gentlemen, I accidentally came into contact with some callers on the call-in program, obviously blinded by their political biases and ignorance, and who repeatedly stated that the houses at Coverley are being leased and not sold. How ridiculous and misleading. For the record, the lands at Coverley is still in the possession of National Housing Corporation. Purchasers are receiving conveyances, not leases. The only land that is leased is in the town square and the common areas. There's also a term in the lease which gives the government the option to review the lease every 5 years. Under this term of the lease, the National Housing Corporation has the power to increase the rent or simply determine the lease, that is, terminate the lease. And for the record, the furniture package at Coverley is optional. Further, government has not placed 1 single cent of taxpayers' money in the project at Coverley. The developer is single-handedly financing this project at Coverley, so this project at Valery. I am not the official speaker this evening, but I must conclude by saying that government is committed towards urban renewal and the upliftment of life and living standard of persons living in the urban corridor. And it also wishes to state that urban renewal is not about constructing buildings, but also about renovating and beautifying existing rental units in the urban area. Very shortly, we will be launching the second aspect of our urban horizon renewal program. That is the renovating and beautifying of existing units. There is no doubt that this project adds a new variety to housing solutions within urban Barbados.
I am pleased to address this evening the official launch of the Valery high-rise housing project. We have invited the public to this event because it marks the delivery of one more of the well-deserved and at the same time highly feasible promises we made to the people of Barbados just under 4 years ago. Since then, we have taken great pride in launching several upscale condominium complexes as well as middle and upper class housing developments in some of the most attractive areas of Barbados. Not too long ago, we launched the 1,000 unit housing development for sale to less affluent Barbadians at Corvally. All those projects were highly consistent with the economic development of Barbados. But I must confess that this particular project is of special significance to me. This is far more than just a standard high-rise housing project. As you've heard from the previous speakers, the Valery high-rise housing project, when completed, will provide 72 well-appointed two-bedroom units and a separate low-rise building for 8 physically challenged persons and their families. But that is only part of the story. This project must be considered unique for several reasons. First, it is part of the blitz on poor quality housing within the greater Bridgetown boundary that runs from Brittons Hill in St. James along the ABC Highway up to Worthing in Christchurch. Valery is the first of several 6-story developments planned to provide decent housing for low-income residents in the 3 most densely populated parishes of Barbados. We've started in St. Michael, which has the greatest concentration of residents seeking decent rented accommodation, as their first step on the housing ladder. We anticipate that even though these units will be initially acquired as rented accommodation, satisfied residents will want to take up the option of buying them at some time in the future. The Valery high-rise housing project will soon be supplemented by 84 similar units at Mason Hall Street in the city of Bridgetown, 108 units at Exmouth, Deacons Road, and 84 at the Grotto, Beccles Road. The second point I want to make is that this project is the result of a fruitful joint partnership between the National Housing Corporation and the private sector. We have said from the beginning that the people of Barbados should not depend exclusively on government to meet all of their needs. In all our major undertakings, from sustaining the development of this country by giving support to ailing industries and protecting jobs during this prolonged economic downturn, to introducing new systems of governance and spreading the culture of enterprise to help to create the new economy, we have sought partners from the private sector and from civil society. It is appropriate, therefore, that I thank and commend those private sector partners who have shown enthusiasm for collaborating with the government in the financing of projects of this kind. We look forward to a continuing and fruitful relationship in this effort. The third reason for celebrating this launch is that it addresses the problem of land shortage in Bridgetown and its environs without sacrificing the social and environmental amenities that Barbadians have grown to expect. As you know, the housing problem cannot be tackled without addressing the serious land shortage we suffer in Barbados. The increasing demand for land to be reserved for agriculture in order to ensure food security, the demand from tourism to create amenities like golf courses, and the demand for housing has pushed the price of land beyond the means of low-income earning Barbadians. It is interesting to note that while the housing market has been depressed in many developed countries, it has remained rather stable in Barbados. Therefore, several alternative solutions, such as identifying vacant plots and bringing them into use, have had to be tried. But in the final analysis, the only sustainable strategy is to build up. In addition to taking residential accommodation to the 6th floor and beyond in due course, there are several other special features of this prototype project. These include adopting for this project the regulations used for managing condominiums in an effort to avoid the degeneration of these units into squalor, as has been known to happen in large cities in developed countries. Providing recreational space for families in order to keep alive and strengthen the community spirit. Introducing environmentally friendly facilities, such as what I hear called grasscrete paving and plants to encourage the greening of Bridgetown, as well as using reflective windows and double glazing to keep the rooms cool. A fourth reason for celebrating the formal launch of this project today is the fact that it is putting the spotlight on the social life of Bridgetown and surrounding districts. When historic Bridgetown and its garrison were inscribed as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO earlier this year, it confirmed our conviction that we had to energize the social life of our capital city. After decades of neglect and exodus, the residential communities of Bridgetown have virtually disintegrated. While the commercial districts were upgraded and were full of life during the day, the capital city was, to all intents and purposes, closed and lifeless at night. We need to capitalize on the increasing numbers of more discerning tourists who are expected to visit Bridgetown to enjoy the nightlife. And the revival of communities in our city is a good starting point. Now, let me make it very clear that this project satisfies all of the requirements, the legislation and the regulations stipulated by the Town and Country Planning Department demanded. And that includes, of course, geotechnical studies to guarantee or to ensure the viability of the buildings. I therefore want to thank the Chief Town Planner and his team for the diligence and professionalism shown through all the stages of developing this project and this project type. On a larger canvas, though, this project type is part of the vision which we share with all fair-minded and rational Barbadians. That vision was clearly articulated by my late predecessor, the Honorable David Thompson, at the time Country Planning Society's 40th anniversary workshop in November 2008. On that occasion, he said that he wanted to see, and I'm quoting him now, Barbados emerge as a nation of healthy, distinct communities, sharing a common economic base and pursuing common goals. A nation in which economic and physical growth is balanced with the conservation and enhancement of urban and rural landscapes, cultural heritage, and natural heritage. A nation characterized by increasing social equity through which all residents partake of the benefits of development. It is about development for the benefit of all the people of Barbados. It is about the sustainable development of this country, unquote. He went on to define sustainable development as, and I quote, meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, unquote. As I see it, this project is an acceptable method of reconciling the conflicting demands of human settlement, the sensible use of land, the development of the physical infrastructure, and the preservation of the natural environment in a state that is suitable for bequeathing to future generations. Some there are who may argue that this vision of Barbados could be realized by leaving housing to market forces. Now, it is true that over the past 50 years, as more and more Barbadians benefited from the heavy investment in education from nursery to tertiary level, the demand for better housing increased. Successful Barbadians have migrated in droves from the old village settlements to the heights and terraces that proliferate across the island. Reinforcing the trend was the age-old Barbadian dream of owning a piece of the rock. Demand was therefore driven not only by affluent Barbadians at home, but by Barbadians of the diaspora who had emigrated decades ago. Then joining them were the many friends of Barbados who have chosen to live here for several reasons. Let me stress that these all have made a significant contribution to the economy and to the quality of life we enjoy in modern Barbados. Over the years, this demand was met by a steady supply of housing that has transformed the landscape of Barbados. Wherever you look today, even in the once restricted plantation yards, there are magnificent housing developments that have sprung up to demonstrate that Barbados was rapidly joining the ranks of countries considered by the United Nations as having a very high human development index. I believe that when the 2010 Population and Household Census report is published, it might show that for the first time in the history of Barbados, wooden chattel houses will constitute less than 20% of occupied dwelling units. And yet, when recessionary storm clouds were gathering in early 2008, and we were asked to lead this country through the storm, we found that there were over 28,000 applications for rental units on the books of the National Housing Corporation, the majority coming from the parish of St. Michael. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that you would agree with me that decent housing is the key to good family life, educational success, and productivity at work. Therefore, every resident of Barbados deserves decent accommodation at a price to suit his or her own pocket. Unfortunately, as we approach the end of the first decade of the 21st century, we were running the risk of creating distinct housing classes in Barbados. the concept of housing classes was crafted by sociologists like Robert Merton in Chicago and John Rex in Birmingham. They showed that rundown, overcrowded urban districts fueled crime, violence, and other antisocial behavior. The government found it totally unacceptable to ignore that section of our society that was being left behind in decaying urban and in some cases rural districts. For too many years now, these settlements were tolerated or provided with piecemeal housing solutions that often required their relocation to other unfamiliar districts, and of course, in the result, they broke up communities. My administration believes that land and house ownership are too important to the Barbadian identity and well-being to be left totally to market forces. We have therefore decided to intervene decisively to ensure that every Barbadian gets an opportunity, a fair chance of owning a piece of this island of ours. So the government in 2008 made a commitment to help every citizen acquire decent, affordable housing. In particular, we promised to house every last person. We have subsequently tried to deliver on these promises, particularly to the most economically vulnerable members of our society, despite a prolonged economic downturn. Assisted by hindsight, some may argue that we came to power at the wrong time, at the early stages of the worst global recession since the Great Depression of the 1930s. But for my administration, what happened was highly consistent with the established tradition of turning to a caring political organization that had the courage to strengthen the safety net in the face of a serious financial crisis and economic downturn. The poorer sections of this society have had a long and anguished history of deprivation. No truly representative and responsible government, therefore, could decide to throw this cohort in the society to the wolves by wantonly dismantling the safety net so carefully woven together since our independence 45 years ago. And an important strand in that safety net is undoubtedly housing. Since January 2008, we have therefore systematically made provision for all classes of Barbadians to access decent, affordable housing and to keep a roof over their heads despite the raging economic storm.